Let's look back to your growing up. So you had sort of this very strict Christian upbringing, and like a lot of people, you kind of pushed back, go off to college. You last night when we were having dinner used sort of a phrase that you kind of parked your faith for a couple decades. Tell us about that parking and getting back in the car.
Yeah, it wasn't so much when I went to college because I lived at home. So I was still very much going to a Bible church and things like that. It was actually when I went east. After law school.
God forsaken.
By the way,
there you go.
My mother passed away last year, and I believe to her dying day she thought I'd gone to Sodom and Gomorrah. No matter what titles I had or what I accomplished, she really deep down inside, I think, felt that I had a little bit betrayed the family by leaving Michigan and going east.
Was leaving Michigan, or did she see you wander from the faith, as it were?
I think it was all of a piece. I think she didn't trust the East Coast as many people don't, with some cause, and she didn't like the. Listen, I think that this in some ways is roughly related to why you couldn't go to movies, because it's an entire lifestyle, and it's the glitz, and it's the fame, and it's basically corrupting. I think it was the basic message. And again, with most of these things, that's not altogether wrong. There's some germ of truth down in there, but it can be taken to an extreme. But so when I came east, and I never, you and I talked about it, I never gave it up. I never said, no, I renounce it, but I just said, I can't deal with that right now. And I go to church occasionally and think about it occasionally, but I put it to one side, because I couldn't, as I moved on or evolved, I couldn't reconcile my values or how I saw the world with a lot of what I had been taught. Sort of very rigid, very judgmental, very right or wrong, intrusive form of faith. I couldn't live that, and so I did set it to one side.
And what helped you return that? I mean, now you're an elder in the Reformed Church of America.
Not till June.
Not till soon to be an elder.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're active in a worship community at the Reformed Church of America, which, for those who don't know, is sort of a Presbyterian Calvinist tradition. You talked a bit about Tim Johnson and others. What helped you rethink about these questions and re-embrace the healthy parts of your Christian upbringing?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say healthy because it's not for me to judge. I mean, it's what I can learn. It's what I can internalize.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't
judge
very good point. Anyone else. But Tim Johnson, we talked about. Tim Johnson was the long time medical editor for ABC News. He's also an ordained minister in this Swedish Covenant Church, I think it's called, small sect out of the Midwest, I think Minnesota. And he did a lot of work. In fact, he wrote a book, and I talked with him through that period of time. Did a lot of work on his own faith and really challenging himself. And Tim and I talked extensively, still talk, but talked extensively about it at the time. And so about my background and some of my difficulties with the way I was raised. And Tim showed me the way, maybe overly stating it, but certainly opened my thinking to the possibility of a faith that was based critically around what Jesus said, starting with what Jesus said, and leaving aside, for the moment at least, a lot of the other stuff. And I found that is something I could understand, I could embrace, I could internalize that, I could live with that, and put aside some of the other things that I personally think are not essential to my faith. Again, I won't judge somebody else, are not essential to my faith. Just put them to one side. Not say they're wrong, just say, I don't know. It's a little bit, I remember once talking with a Catholic woman about saints. And now I was not raised in a tradition where we believe in saints. That's not the way I understand Catholicism. But I said, I don't know if they exist or not. They may. I'm not saying they don't. I just don't know that. And I'm not sure why I need to figure that out. I've got other things I should be focusing on.
What are some of the vexing faith questions you think about now that puzzle you still?
Oh, well.
It could be a long list.
The most important thing is not whether it's long, it's growing.
That's a great thing.
Because as I get older, maybe this, other people feel this way, the less I know. The more I discover the things I just don't understand. And I actually find that exhilarating. Getting older feels good because I have so much more to explore and to learn about. I mean, you and I talked about this some last night. We had dinner last night. And one of the things that has weighed on me, particularly last year, is letting people go in business. And how, I asked David last night, okay, would Jesus have fired people? If I'm really saying I'm following Jesus, I can't quite imagine saying, you know what, we just are going to have to let a quarter of you go, which is what I did at ABC News last year.
Yeah, yes, his last act before leaving
Yes.
ABC News was to reduce total headcount by 25%, and that was your swan song. And instead of leaving that for your successor to do,
Right.
you
Which occurred to
did
me.
the deed. This is not an abstract question you were wrestling with. These
No,
are friends,
no.
co-workers, faces,
Yeah.
not names.
People who've been there 30,
I
40
mean,
years.
faces, not numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, and in a news organization, you work very closely with people over the years. You build real bonds. But I took a hard look at the business and the economics and concluded this was just not going to work. When you just take the lines out, you're out of business. And I didn't want to be out of business, and I concluded what we needed to do was, rather than do 1,000 cuts, where there's a sword of Damocles hanging over the institution's head for years, to just say, okay, we're going to do it all in one fell swoop, get it behind us, and then you've got at least 5 years of clear running. You'll have good operating for 5 years. The corporation will be off your back. You can make some decisions and really build a new business. And we, fortunately, and the company helped with this, we had a fairly attractive buyout package we could offer everybody, and we had, it was reported to be 375, it was a little bit north of there, of 375 people we say goodbye to, all but 20 took a voluntary package. Now, let's be clear, I had announced we're going to cut a lot of people, so it's not entirely voluntary, but they left on their own, with some autonomy, with some ability to decide for themselves when and how. But one of the things I have struggled with is that really something Jesus would do to people. So there are things like that that I sure haven't figured out.